di wodi to go to Malese. Ditele wa nyongo na nyongo. Lena di wa na mwaye umutiti. Paise mo na di pita. Binyon gele jemia la basele bison. Chebe ya bonde energy ba mi sesa. Madoe masumonde di kadiwo. Wanjara debu e koko biese. Miyango mi miyango majale no. Miyango mi majale no. Manchawe no. Manchawe no. Manchawe no. Manchawe no. Though history may not be kind, our enemies will try to make you forget who you are.
Die beiden sind beste Freunde. Genauso wie du und Rudolf in diesem Alter waren.
Guten Tag, Kaiserin.
Ein perfekter, schwarzer deutscher Prinz. Würde das dir gefallen?
Yes, sir. I serve at the pleasure of the Kaiser.
Know that everything I did so that our people would be free.
What's the matter, Rudolf?
The Kaiser's like family. But raised as brothers to go against him.
Wilhelm is not your family. Your skin will always be the color of the rich Cameroonian soil. And they will always walk over it as if they own it.
Your family would rule under German protection. So why did you turn against us?
Your father's new ideas of independence are cancer. I fear have infected you too.
Aber mit der Hinrichtung eines Jungen startest du einen Krieg.
Wir sind schon im Krieg.
They're inside the palace.
Kein Krieg. Lass mich sofort frei.
What you've just watched is part of our award-winning short film about Rudolf Duala Manga Bell, a heroic king, resistance leader, and martyr in the liberation of Cameroon, a German colony in Africa. It's a powerful chapter of lost history that deserves to be reclaimed and turned into a multi-season TV series so we can tell the whole story to a new generation.
The most compelling stories are true ones. You can help us tell this true story of a real-life African hero by expressing your interest at angel.com/GermanKing. The German King is the story about the brave people who stood up against oppression and rebelled against German occupation.
It's very much a Moses story. Rudolf Duala Manga Bell is an African born in Cameroon, and like Moses, he is raised as a royal in foreign courts, in his case, Germany. When he returns to Cameroon, he sees how his people are being subjugated, oppressed, and enslaved, and he rebels. He sacrifices his kingly comforts and riches for the good of his people. If you believe what Martin Luther King Jr. said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, then understanding this story of injustice and how it was overcome is important. And we see that this issue is still an issue today.
We've seen films of heroic overcoming of injustice before, but the German King offers a previously unseen view of African valor and reclaims a lost history for modern audiences.
By immortalizing these stories in film, we preserve and keep them fresh in the minds of this and future generations. Seeing Africans as royals with their culture and heritage celebrated positively instead of stereotypically, young boys and girls of color will see people who look like they do. They'll see themselves represented in robust, meaningful, dignified ways. You'll also love seeing traditional costumes, language, landscapes, architecture, the majesty and splendor of Africa during that time. And you'll also see, of course, the extravagance of the European royals and their palaces and culture.
In this series, you'll see humanity in its glorious goodness as you see the explorers and missionaries who spread the gospel and seek to end subjugation. But you'll also see those who wanted to do the exact opposite. You'll see what happens when greed and gluttony become a priority, and the horrific consequences when we cease to see each other as human beings. We need your help to teach future generations what heroism looks like. Go to angel.com/GermanKing to show your support for this project now.
There's an old African proverb that says, "The tale of the hunt will always glorify the hunter until the lion speaks." This project finally gives a voice to the lion. And many of our cast and crew are native Africans or descendants of Africans.
Adetokumboh McCormick currently voices the role of Isaac in the hit Netflix animated series Castlevania. Other acting credits, which are a ton, include blockbusters such as Oscar-nominated Blood Diamond, Battle Los Angeles, Where We Met, and Captain America Winter Soldier.
The German King series writer, Glenton Richards, is a Writers Guild Award-nominated writer, having written on the hugely successful series The Expanse, as well as having worked on shows like Fargo and American Crime.
And we have some amazing other film professionals like Emmy award-winning editor Stephanie Filo, multiple Grammy award winner Mark Batson as a composer.
We are so thrilled to be working with Angel Studios for distribution. Angel Studios series, The Chosen, the world's biggest TV series on the life of Jesus Christ, has generated hundreds of millions of views and over $100 million. I feel like I can identify with Rudolf Duala Manga Bell. We are both West African. We both grew up under colonial influence. I was born in Sierra Leone and I was raised in Kenya. And I attended a prestigious private English school, and everything I learned was about how amazing colonialism was, and learned nothing about the rich history and culture of Africa prior to European arrival. So very much like Rudolf, I was indoctrinated into a foreign culture with very little knowledge of my own.
Think about it. If asked to name a famous African, most Americans would say Black Panther, which is a fictional superhero. And some may say Nelson Mandela, but there are so many more real-life superheroes from Africa, and this series is going to share several other stories with you.
I grew up in Africa, and even I never knew African kings like Rudolf Duala Manga Bell or Queen Yasintewa even existed. I would watch movies like Braveheart and Saving Private Ryan and Lincoln, and I would think, I wish we had more films that celebrated our great African heroes. So that inspired me to make the short film, The German King, but it really deserves to be turned into a multi-season TV series to tell the whole story.
We want the next generation to get to see these real-life heroes who lived in Africa. This is a series we hope will empower communities around the world to celebrate and honor their African heritage.
You can join us and express your interest in helping us tell this story of courage, sacrifice, faith, empathy, and love by visiting angel.com/GermanKing now.
Hello everybody, and thank you for joining the German King livestream. My name is Adetokumboh. I am the creator and lead actor of the German King series. For those of you just joining us, the German King is an epic series based on the true story of King Rudolf Duala Manga Bell. He was a Cameroonian prince who was raised in Germany, and when he came back to Cameroon to become king, he led a rebellion against oppressive German colonial rule. And it's just an incredible story, and I'm so happy that all of you are joining us and helping us make this dream of making this man's, telling a story about this man's extraordinary life. I've been away for about a month, so it's really good to be back and be part of these live streams once again. I've actually been location scouting for this series, and so I was in Africa, spent some time in Kenya and Ethiopia, and I got to check out some incredible locations. And there's so much I want to share with you, some pictures and some information, and we'll basically save that till the end of the live stream. If you want to support the German King, right now we're just gauging interest, but please go to angel.com/GermanKing. The link is right at the bottom of your screen there, so just go to angel.com/GermanKing and you can express interest. We've had, I think, over 700 people express interest so far, and thank you from the bottom of my heart. We really appreciate all the love, all the support, and all the people who want to make this show a reality. And I think we've had people express interest in the amount of over $650,000. So that's incredible. I couldn't be happier. And let's just keep on going, guys. So once again, go to angel.com/GermanKing. We've got an exciting lineup for you today. We've got a very, very special guest by the name of Stephanie Filo. She is an Emmy award-winning editor. She's also won a Peabody Award as well, and she is a social activist and just an overall incredible person. And she's going to be joining us, so please do not go anywhere. In fact, one of the things I want to ask you guys is take a guess as to how many Emmys Stephanie has won. Feel free to put that in the comment section, and whoever guesses right, I'll give you a special shout out. But once again, we're being joined by Emmy royalty, Stephanie Filo, and I could not be more excited to have her join us today. So without much further ado, Stephanie, are you there? I would love to have you. There she is. There she is. Hi, Stephanie.
How are you? Thank you for having
I'm
me.
great. How are you? Thank you for being
I'm
here.
good.
So don't forget, everybody. I want you to guess how many Emmys Stephanie Filo has won. Is it? Well, I'm not even give you any hints, but yeah, she's won. She's won some Emmys, and we're just beyond honored to have your talent on board the German King. So, Stephanie, let's see. Has anyone commented this yet? We'll get to that later on. We'll get to that later on. Stephanie, you are on cloud nine right now. You've had a stellar past couple of weeks. You won an Emmy for the Black Lady Sketch Show on HBO, which is phenomenal. Congratulations. And you
Thank
also
you.
have the #1 series on Netflix right now, Dahmer. So how does that feel to know that you're just so successful? You're on top of the world right now. How does that feel?
I mean, it's an honor, really. Like I think, a Black Lady sketch show is something that I just adore so much, right? Like it's a show that I think speaks to so many different people in so many different ways and is so relatable. So it's just an honor to, I guess, be recognized in that way. And Dahmer was such a challenging show to edit, but I think we all were really fighting for the victims to have their voices kind of heard and their stories told, which they haven't traditionally been in, Dahmer related projects. There's so many different Dahmer movies and documentaries in the past, and they all kind of focus on the sensationalism of the crimes as opposed to, the victims' perspectives, but also the systemic kind of failures that led to him being able to commit these crimes for so long. So I think it's an honor that people are gravitating towards these couple of different shows that I've worked on, all very polar opposite shows as well. But just I think I'm just glad that the content is reaching. It seems like the right people, and just hope to keep telling stories in these different perspectives.
Excellent. So now that brings me to my next question. Black Lady Sketch Show, a comedy with a really strong message. And then Dahmer, which is a very dark series. In fact, I spoke to you, was it yesterday? And I was like, I'm going to say this in Creole because I said, hey, go titi, I'm going to get a gap because I fade. I don't be able to watch out, which basically means I had to take a walk and a breather because I was like, oh my gosh. And I forget that Stephanie can do it all. But what is it like doing something as light and funny as Black Lady Sketch Show? Yes, and it also does have a very strong message, but also something that's darker, like Dahmer. Like, what is your approach different as an editor?
I think what people don't realize as an editor is like how much time you spend with the footage, right? So I think my approach for anything is kind of the same in that I just try to. Well, first I watch through all of the raw footage that exists, but I also try to get in like the headspace of where I need to be for it. So in the Dahmer instance, I was thinking through like what tone would these scenes play and what perspective am I, or what lens am I telling this scene through. So it's like I would listen to heavier like temp score or things that like feel like they're in the right, I guess the right cadence, I guess, if that's the right word. And I kind of do the same, even though they're very different shows, that's kind of my approach also on a Black Lady sketch show, where I'm like, okay, this sketch today is like a rom-com, right? So I'm like, let me watch like a romantic comedy and try to get in that headspace of like how those types of movies are edited, where you're like, okay, this is how the music is approached. This is how maybe the design might be approached. This is how like pauses and reactions would take place in like a comedic version of this, like a parody of a rom-com. So it's kind of a similar approach, just very, very different content. And I think for me, I try to bounce between genres as much as I can, because sometimes you might end up on a show like the Jeffrey Dahmer story, and that's not a very light show to work on. But I went immediately from that to this past season of a Black Lady sketch show, which I'm like, at least my spirits are back up, and you're kind of laughing again. So I think that's something that's kind of nice in, at least in editing, where you can kind of bounce between things a little bit.
I have another question. How does it feel? Do you basically have moments where, after you edit something that's very dark and very heavy, does that stay with you for a long time?
It does. Yeah, there's a lot of scenes that like you can't unexperience. And a lot of footage that you kind of can't unexperience. Like there's an episode of the Jeffrey Dahmer story where we're looking at victim impact statements, and I don't know if you remember this from the 90s, but it was all over the news when the victims gave their impact statements, and that's something that's haunted me since the 90s, when I first saw it, because they're just so upsetting to watch, and there's kind of this recreation of the exact same moment in the show that I spent like months trying to work on and make sure it was perfect and make sure it kind of did this moment justice.
I watched that. My heart broke into a million pieces, Stephanie. A million pieces.
It's like the most just like gutting scene in real life, and so to try to recreate that and try to like find those moments in the footage, and try to also just convey that emotion through like the language of the show as well, where you're like, okay, but this is trying to lead to like a bigger story arc within the episode, right? Like that's also the episode where you see Jesse Jackson, where he gets involved in the story, where the bigger sort of community involvement is happening and bigger discussions around this are happening. So yeah, it makes it difficult to sleep at night because there's a lot of weight on this just dark it's like you're also trying to do something justice, or maybe trying to tell a bigger story, and it's a little bit, it weighs on you because A, it's dark content, but B, it's just like, did I do it justice, and that's always to
I
be,
will tell you,
to be determined.
Incredible. He did an incredible job, and job well done. Once again, if you want to express interest in the German King, please go to angel.com/German King. The website's right at the bottom of your screen right there, angel.com/German King. Now, I wanted to ask, you are a lady in what is traditionally a male-dominated field. So how does that feel, being a woman and also being a Black woman in this field? Like, what is that like? Your guest Stephanie's awesome, someone just said. I concur. Thank you very much. I concur.
Yeah, it is. Just post-production in general, editing and post-production are very like white male driven fields. I think it was about 10 years or so before I met another Black editor. I just thought that I was like the only one that existed. So it's a very not diverse part of this industry, unfortunately. I think it's slowly getting better, but it has been kind of it's been like a weird, lonely road in some instances, because sometimes you'll be on a project where you're the only person, and you're like the voice of all Black people, or you're the voice of all Black women, or you're kind of that token person, or you're just like, oh, maybe I'm here for optics, like I don't know. And so I think that's kind of what I've seen within the post-production world, but it's also I do think it's getting better, and I think I've seen a lot of, especially women editors, women of color, hiring other women as their assistant editors, just to try to kind of diversify the field a little bit and see maybe more representation for all of us, as the newer folks come up.
Yeah. So could you tell me, why representation is so very important across the board in post-production, in front of the camera, behind the camera? Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, I think there's so much nuance to any story, right? But there's so much nuance culturally to any story. So, there might be something that I watch, like a reaction shot, and it reads totally different to me as like a Black person, than if like a white man was cutting something. You know, when I think of a Black lady sketch show, maybe there's references that just utterly like might not land exactly the same if it was like a white male editor, which is traditionally the case, you know. So I think, you know, especially in post-production, at least on my end of things, it's like we spend so much time trying to find the nuance in performances, or if it's like a documentary, the nuances in, you know, someone telling their stories. Sometimes someone might be telling a story and, you know, they stop talking and like the instinct would be, oh, I should cut away, but like maybe there's a reason there's a long pause here. Maybe there's like more that they're telling with their facial expressions. Maybe you know, maybe there's something else to it. And so I think being able to have different different perspectives in front of and behind the camera just helps to add to that nuance and like make sure that all those perspectives are seen. You know, I talked to one editor who cut the show Empire, right? And it was a white male editor. He was like, oh, it was fine. I cut it. I thought I was really like proud of it. And the Black director of his episodes was like, why would you cut to this? Like, this is clearly the better reaction shot. This is, you know, and he was like, my mind was blown a little bit because there's little nuanced things and expressions that he just wasn't picking up on. And I think that's why it's so important to have teams that, you know, represent different, you know, just different types of people and stories across the board, you know, because if he had a teammate, say he had an assistant editor who was like Black or a person of color, maybe they would have read those expressions differently, you know, and could have said something about it. But that's, you know, traditionally just hasn't been the case. So it's, you know, that's why it's exciting that stories, you know, that stories are starting to be told more, such as The German King, for example, where, you know, it's, these are, you know, things that need to be told, things that have been not, people from history maybe that haven't been showcased, people, backgrounds and origins that maybe the rest of the world doesn't know about, and like they don't know that they don't know about it because they just don't have that kind of content. So it's you know, I think that's why representation ultimately is important, you know.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And actually brings me to my next question. What drew you to German King? Because I know you are a very, very busy editor, and Stephanie's actually working on a project right now and took time out of a very, very busy day to talk to us, and so it's something we really appreciate. Thank you. Can you talk about what you're working on right now? No, don't worry. I'm sure you're NDA, so don't worry about that. But thank you very much for joining us. But you know, you at this point, you're a very in-demand editor. And what is it about the show that sort of that drew you in, and what do you look for in when you start editing or before you start a job?
I mean, to me, I always look for something where it's like a story that I think, you know, I could bring something to it, or a story that maybe hasn't been told. You know, I think a story such as The German King is exciting because there aren't very many unknown heroes who have not been, their stories have not been told. You know, I think this is such a it's such a powerful story, you know, and I'm glad that you really kind of took the initiative to tell that, you know, in the short and now in the series as well, because it's just exciting to hear about these different heroes that maybe the world hasn't heard about, and to
because we even didn't know about these things, right?
Yeah.
Growing up in Africa, well, like, you grew up mostly here, but we didn't know about this. These stories weren't told in our history classes. They weren't in our history books. There are no documentaries about these people.
No.
And that's just crazy to me.
Yeah, even in like African history, like books and stuff, it's like you don't really see this. And so, you know, it's just exciting that you're, you know, telling a story that needs to be told. You know, I would love to see more cases of African, you know, history told in any of our media, because I think, you know, I think watching Black Panther, for example, was the first time I was like, oh, this is like, they're like represented like in a positive way. Right. It's kind of like this stigma to African stories, which there absolutely should not be. And it comes back again to that perspectives and nuanced situation. But yeah, it's just exciting that, and that was obviously a fictional story. So it's exciting that, you know, these real stories are being told, and that people such as yourself are taking the initiative to really just make sure that these like unsung heroes are getting the light that they deserve.
Thank you. Thank you. And once again, if you want to see The German King be turned into a TV series, a multi-season TV series, please go to angel.com/German King to express your interest. And be sure to like, subscribe, smash that like button, as the kids say these days. And please spread the word. We are so stoked about this show, and we really believe the world should see this. And it's such an inspiring show as well. Someone said, yeah, the German King series. I can't see that. Thank you. Yeah, so The German King is just, it's such a story that I'm very passionate about, and that I really feel would be life-changing in some ways. Whoa, what does that sound? Hold on, I'm sorry, I'm having slight technical difficulties, so apologies, bear with me, everybody. So Stephanie, my other question is, what do you have any stories, or, you know, because you've been on several red carpets for the gold, not the Gold Globe, sorry, the Emmys. You won more than one Emmy, as we can see over there. Do you have any interesting stories about celebrities you may have met, or? And I see with a cane. So Stephanie, what? Tell me about that first of all.
So I'm in New York at the moment working on a feature, and I was actually, tying both of your questions together. I was leaving my apartment here I found out I was nominated for an Emmy, and I was like, I'm going to go dress shopping right here in New York. I was leaving the apartment and fell down the staircase that's here outside my apartment and broke my ankle, and sprained it as well. Goodness. So I've been on crutches for most of the summer. And for the Emmys, I said there's no way that I'm like using crutches at the Emmys. I'm gonna fall and die. So I was like, because my dress, I was like, I'm gonna trip. And so I kind of looked far and wide to see if there was like some other solution I could come up with. And so I wore a boot and had this I found a cane that had rhinestones on it, as you could probably see from that picture.
Very blinged out. I love it.
And then
that's your dad?
found, that's my dad. He came from Sierra Leone to come to the Emmys with me. And
amazing.
Yeah, and then I found online some like rhinestone sneakers to wear on my good foot. So it was
incredible.
Yeah, it was an adventure, to say the least.
I can imagine. So you had the full look, the rhinestones, the bedazzled cane, and you looked amazing, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
So, and congratulations on the win. Now,
Thank
Stephanie,
you so
in
much.
addition to, you do so much. In addition to being an editor, you are an activist. You won a Peabody Award. Can you talk about the other things that you do, and how do you find the time to do all of these things, your social activism and everything else? Can you talk more about that?
Sure. So I'm on the board for an organization in Sierra Leone called Girls Empowerment Sierra Leone. And basically it's a program for girls 11 to 16, where they learn kind of leadership skills, but also like social activism skills and advocacy for different groups within their community. So basically we do year-round workshops with them. They do a community project every year. So they figure out if, for example, one year there was a school that didn't have enough seating. So the girls would get to school. If all of the seats were full, they would get sent home. Like they didn't get to stand or anything. They sent them home. So they spent the year teaching the community why this was a problem, fundraising. So they spent all this time out fundraising for chairs and more desks for their school. And by the end of the year, they had raised enough money for like 100 new chairs and desks for their school. that was 1 year. You know, 1 year they did a national project, which was basically a PSA campaign about FGM, female genital mutilation. And so they, through a combination of like, we did some sort of like filmmaking workshops with them, some editing stuff I did with them, so that they could go out and film sort of their own PSAs and stories that they could convey to their communities. So they got to be on like the radio. They made YouTube videos. They made like WhatsApp mass, you know, messages that they could send out throughout throughout the year. So they just built out a PSA campaign. So ultimately, it's about trying to teach girls these different skills so that they can kind of solve issues within their communities on their own. Because I think what happens a lot, unfortunately, with NGOs especially, is like people come in, they maybe help a community for like a really short period of time and then leave, and then the community doesn't have the resources or knowledge to maintain that, right? So it's more about just like sustainable resources and ways to build the community and, you know, girls' future leadership in, you know, trying to not only like, yeah, them kind of advocate for their communities, but like teach their peers the same thing. You know, they all, you know, outside of our organization are just like, oh, this is cool. And they'll have like little sister circles with each other where they'll like gather with other girls in their schools to talk about some of these issues, like totally unprovoked by us. You know, it's just like their own individual activism and like work on trying to be mentors to each other. So it's really just about like creating like programming and sustainability for girls within Sierra Leone.
Stephanie, that is absolutely incredible. And actually, I have to tell you, you inspired me to do something. And listen, Stephanie's a constant inspiration. So as she knows, I look up to her constantly, though she's younger than I am. But one of the things we want to do with the German King series and just what you're talking about, giving back to the community. And I think that really is what we represent, what Angel Studios represent. And our plan, I remember when I went down to Kenya to location scout, I met with this young lad, and he was the son of a gentleman that my dad worked with. And he talked about, his name's McCormack, he's actually named after my father. We share the same last name, interestingly enough. And he was like, I would be an actor like you, and I want to be a filmmaker. And I got to see some of the stuff that he was doing. And you know, he was making films. You know, he had just like a really simple camera, but he did something on FGM and, you know, raising awareness about it. He was doing he's doing a series about tribalism and how we as Africans need to love each other, and how there's more that, you know, unites us than separates us, and how we need to start taking pride in who we are, which is so much what Rudolf Duala Manga Bell represented. That is very much his legacy. Us taking our, you know, the initiative to say, let's break our own chains and let's, you know, be the voice in the darkness and basically, you know, ride ourselves and you know, go to a new dawn, you know. And it was such a beautiful, just listening to this man who doesn't have much and lives in the slum, but, you know, was able to just do so much with what he had. And then he showed this box. I don't know if we have the video, but he had this box. I went to his tiny 1-bedroom apartment in the middle of the slum, and it was this like a box. It was like a yellow box, and inside it, I was like, "What is this box?" And he goes, "Whatever I have, be it a shilling, that's the currency in Kenya. Yeah, there it is." He goes, "Whatever I have, I put money in there because what I want to do is at the end of the year, whatever's in there, I want to take a child to school." And I want to basically be responsible for their schooling and get them out of the ghetto and help them to become whoever they want to be. And he's like, you have to share a smile. And I was like, wow. You know, I had to ask myself, I'm like, Ade, what are you doing? You know, when you have this person who doesn't have, you know, much, but he was literally giving everything he had to make sure that, you know, other people in his community were better. And so it inspired me to then say, you know what, as filmmakers, because I went down there and I gave a talk to the community in the slums. And I taught some acting classes and whatnot, and told them about the German King. First of all, when I showed them the trailer, they were losing their minds because it was the first time they saw themselves just represented in this powerful, robust way. They saw themselves as kings and queens, not just as people living in poverty, living in disease, but people who really were, dignified people. And it blew my mind because I was like, I'll get chills because I'm seeing them and they're like, can we be a part of this? And then, and for me, I was like trying to offer them money and they're like, we don't want money. And I said, well, what do you want? And they said, we want opportunity. We want to learn. We want to have acting classes. We want to have. And so I spoke to Stephanie, and she's agreed to come on board and just teach some free classes, teach these people to be editors, my production team. And thank you, Angel Studios, for really being behind this, because this is what we are about, in teaching people, that they can be the best that they can be and give them the tools so that they can get out of their current situation and make a better life for themselves and ultimately their community. So it's such a beautiful thing that's what we're going to be doing to give back. And you guys can help us do that by just expressing interest, going to angel.com/German King. Once again, angel.com/German King, and let's make history and let's, really continue the legacy of Rudolf Duala Manga Bell. And it's so interesting because I remember I was talking to one of my friends who's atheist, and he was like, we're talking about, because I'm a Christian man, and we're talking about why we do good things, right? And why being good is important. And he has the argument with a lot of people that it's because we want to go to the afterlife. And that shouldn't be, we're going to live in heaven and live forever. And that really shouldn't be why we do good things. As Christians, we should do things because we're followers of Christ and doing things because it's the right thing to do. And it just has really helped me just to see, whatever, as we say in Sierra Leone, rain doesn't fall on one roof alone. It basically, because one day your life might be amazing, but the person, your neighbor, might have a bad day, but that easily could be you. The shoe could be the other foot. Karma. That actually happened to me when I was in France. So quick, as you know, I was in France a few months ago for the Cannes Film Festival, and I lost my passport. And then while I was looking for my passport, I was in Uber and I lost my phone, and it was a disaster. I had a plane to catch, and Harmon Brothers, who works with Angel Studios, was with me. Was supposed to go to Germany to cover Princess Marilyn and do some research, and I couldn't get on the plane, and I couldn't contact them either to be like, I've lost my passport, I'm in trouble, And so I'm literally, and mind you, I was wearing this nice African shirt and looking good. By the end of me looking for my passport, my phone, I looked very disheveled, I looked terrible. And all I wanted, so I get off at the train station, and I'm asking people, I'm like, can I use your phone? Can I use you? I have nothing. And the way people looked at me, because mind you, like my shirt now is just, I'm sweating, I sweat, I'm nervous and stressed. And I looked just a mess. And people looked down on me like I was nothing. And it was the weirdest feeling, because I was like, and so thankfully this man, Kassam, I think his name is, and shout out to you, you're amazing. And, I'm here because of you, really, ultimately. But he was like, listen, whatever you need, I'll give you my phone, I give you whatever. He bought me lunch. And he said, people look at you because they think you're just some immigrant. And I would be like, I am Adetokumboh McCormack, I'm the son of Frederick Adekumbi McCormack, my name is crown carried over the waters. I was having my gladiator moment for some reason, but, I just was like, I am somebody. And, no matter who you are, where you're from, ultimately, and whatever your stance is on immigration, whatever, it's like we're all human beings and must be treated with respect and dignity. But it taught me a valuable lesson, because I can never look at another person and judge them because they may not have the same background or have the same opportunities that I do. But that man, because of him, he gave me his phone. I ran up a bill because I was calling my producers, calling Angel Studios, calling my dad, because I was like, Daddy, this is what, I call my dad Daddy, because I was like, Daddy, this is what happened, and he's like, just keep your head up. And that really meant a lot. And then I went back, and this gentleman, I remember after a long conversation, he said, what did he say? He said, all we need is love. And I was like, I don't need you to quote the Beatles song right now. I just need help. And he was like, no, I mean, he's like, without love as human beings, what hope do we have? And that really resonated. I was like, yeah, that is the issue. We don't love each other. We don't empathize with each other. And really, we're all in this literally together. When they say injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, that's what they're talking about, And so, Kassam, thank you very much for letting me use your phone and just helping me out. I appreciate you. So if you're watching this, thank you. But then going back to that as well, it's funny how quickly we forget these lessons, right? I went to Kenya. So Kenya was incredible. Shout out to Visit Africa Limited for the most incredible trip. They let me go location scouting and safaris and whatnot. So I was on safari in Masai Mara, and we're driving along, and this car, maybe 2 or 3 cars ahead of us, gets stuck in a ditch. And I'm thinking, gosh, just hurry up because we need to see the animals. And it was very interesting how I responded automatically. And then thankfully they ended up getting the car to the ditch and whatnot. But literally 5 minutes later, my car gets stuck in the ditch, and we're surrounded by animals, and I'm talking about like 5 or 6, a pride of lions circling our car. And I think we have a video about it. I think maybe, but it was very, very terrifying because I was like, literally, I was like, am I gonna die? I'm with my 5-year-old nephew, and he's like, are we gonna be Lion's Lunch? And I was like, we're not gonna be Lion's Lunch,
So fans, we got stuck. So what will we do? We got stuck in the middle of the drive-thru, fans. So please help us.
No man left behind.
Please, fans. Please
Come out the
help
solo.
us because we are stuck here and in danger. Please, fans. Please, can you help us, fans?
We're actually. Oh, so precious. But listen, isn't he adorable? But one amazing thing was, so we're stuck, but then a group of other cars came and surrounded us and basically protected us from the lions. And then another car attached bungees and ropes and dragged us out of the ditch. And I was like, wow, that's amazing, because that's really what this is about, working together, really just to help each other, because you never know that the shoe could be on the other foot. And it was literally 5 minutes after I was like, we gotta go. I ended up being stuck in this ditch. So thank you to everybody who saved us that day. Much appreciated. But going back to just the German King series, really, this is what Rudolf Duala Manga Bell was about. He was about, he lived in his amazing palace, but when he saw that his people were being subjugated and oppressed under tyrannical German colonial rule, he was like, this, even though it doesn't directly affect me, it affects my people. And the mark of true leadership is standing up against injustice and doing something about it, even if it costs me my life. And that is something that, I'm so inspired by him every day. And I always think, I'm like, how would Rudolf handle these situations? And it's a marvelous, marvelous thing. He's an incredible, incredible hero and an icon, and someone that I look up to. And once again, guys, if you want to help make the German King series happen, to express interest, go to angel.com/German King. The link is right below. Angel.com/German King. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share the link, and help us make the German King series a reality. So once again, so Stephanie, let's thank you, everybody. Get involved. Thank you very much. Bing the bell. Bing. So I want to tell you guys a little bit about how Stephanie we've had a working relationship for quite a while. Stephanie was the editor on my very first short film / miniseries. It became a miniseries, or a web series rather. And so first of all, thank you for your patience, because she's a seasoned editor. It was my very first thing that I was working on. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. But you were so patient, and you taught me so much about filmmaking and editing. And thank you. I don't think I've ever told you that.
Aw. Thank you. It was that one was just so much fun to work on. So it was a treat.
Thank you. And we did it with my our cousin Zinga Blake, who was extraordinary and doing amazing things. And the three of us, we were part of something pretty special a few years ago, going back to social impact and causes. Stephanie, talk about what we did a few years ago.
So back in, was this 2014?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, holy,
yeah,
I'm like, wow. I was like, what year was this again?
Yeah.
So in 2014, 2014 and 2015, there was an Ebola crisis in West Africa. Basically, the two of us, our cousin Zinga, some other Sierra Leonean diaspora who live here in Los Angeles with us, we were just very frustrated, I think. I mean, I don't want to speak for you two, Tokes, but it's I think we were very just like helpless in a way. It's like frustrated because there was a lot of misinformation, unfortunately, about Ebola that was being spread throughout West Africa. So there were things like, oh, if you bathe in like onion juice, like you won't you know, like just things like that. But then on top of that, the organizations that were kind of spreading information, these were like flyers in rural areas, where, you know, there might be a high illiteracy rate. So it's like there's flyers about how to like stop the spread of Ebola, but like that doesn't do anything if the people don't understand the flyers. So we, I think, out of just frustration and wanting to help in whatever way we could, got together and basically built out a PSA campaign, within, you know, the local language there, Creole, and just trying to find a way, I guess, to get the correct information out there. You know, I know we talked to like doctors and people involved, on the ground, and just tried to get as much information as we could built into this kind of PSA campaign. And that's sort of where we started. And it from there, you know, I know we were on like, there's a channel that was created during this Ebola crisis. We were kind of run constantly on that channel. We were on the radio there. There were DVDs that were sent that we made that went there, like hundreds and hundreds of DVDs, and, you know, just trying to get that information. Trying to get that information out there and stay on top of the news and how to, you know, what new information was coming out. And I think just from there, we kind of evolved into, you know, we had our social media channels that we were just trying to spread information on, you know, because that wasn't being reported in the news, unfortunately. Like, for whatever reason, they don't always, they don't always talk about West Africa in the news, you know. So, you know, we had our social media channels. We eventually paired with the only fully functioning hospital, I think, that was remaining at the time, Emergency USA, and we created a challenge, basically the Shake Ebola Off challenge.
The Shake Ebola Off challenge, yes. Talk about that for a second, because that was amazing. That spread like wildfire. It was,
Yeah, I think, well, that one also started because like this was, you know, this was after the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge happened. This was, you know, we saw kind of locally, there were different things where it's like, post a photo with no makeup for Ebola or something. Do you remember that?
I do remember
there was
that.
Like some weird things happening, and we're like, but that doesn't help anybody, you know. Like, what needs to happen is like people need to be donating money to help. So at the time, you know, dancing is such a huge part, I feel like, of our culture, and like people couldn't be out dancing. Like there was no ability to do that, and so we kind of created this challenge that took off. That was the Shake Ebola Off challenge, and it was, you know, you either do a dance for us and nominate other people to dance as well, or donate to Emergency USA. Obviously, the goal is to get as many people to donate to Emergency USA as possible. But I think, you know, luckily we were able to get a number of people to do both things and kind of get it off the ground for us. You know, it was just really exciting to see people gravitating towards it. And we had, you know, like my ultimate hero, Kevin Bacon,
Kevin Bacon
ended up.
He did the challenge, which was amazing. He did it to the Footloose, which was like highlight of our campaign. And then once he did that, it got featured in Forbes, and it took off. And, you know, Forbes was like, this little grassroots you know, organization is trying to raise $1 million to go back to. And then we got a little clip of Kevin Bacon doing the Footloose Shake Ebola Off challenge, which was so cool. That's amazing. It was amazing. And yeah, and because of him, it took off, and we featured on Entertainment Tonight and all of these channels. And that also, interestingly enough, bringing it back to what Angel Studios is doing, realizing that you can make such a huge change, a big difference, just by going to individuals who see the need for change. Kevin, amazing, you're my hero, Kevin Bacon. But just seeing that there is a need to change, and it starts with one person. It starts with the individual. It doesn't need to, you know, be this huge thing that will grow into a big thing. because when enough people see that there is a need and that something needs to be done, then they can make a difference. And that was what I learned from the Sheikh Bullock Challenge, and also what I've learned from Angel Studios. I mean, the model is the same. It's like going to the individual and saying, why are these stories important? What do you want to see? And you've got all these people saying, yes, we feel like these stories are important, and we will contribute in whatever way to make this a reality. And so, once again, like, Stephanie's my new hero, someone just said. She's mine too. We have to wrestle for that. She's my hero. Thanks, Christy. I believe. Yeah, she's an extraordinary human being. And we're super stoked to have you on board, Stephanie. And where do you find the time? That's what I don't understand. You're doing so many different things. How do you find the time?
I don't sleep. I think that's.
Well, I'll get text messages you from 4 in the morning about some cause. I'm like, oh, here we go.
Gotta put the insomnia to good use, I think. So it's just
but going
busy that way.
But going back to helping out, Stephanie, once again, you are such an inspiration, and we really do hope that when we go to Kenya and we do give these kids an opportunity, one of my dream goal is really to get one person to co-direct with me from the slums, and who has been educated, who we've walked with and trained with, and someone who Stephanie's worked, who will co-edit an episode and whatnot. So you're helping just create history and really helping change lives. And so shout out to Angel Studios. You all are amazing. And shout out to everybody who has contributed to this campaign, who's expressed interest to our campaign. And once again, if you want to be part of making history, go to angel.com/German King. Once again, that's angel.com/German King. It's at the bottom of your screen. Thank you. So does anyone have any questions? Actually, really quickly. So another thing I did when I went to Kenya was I went to my old school, which was incredible. It was the first time I'd been. Yeah, it was the first time I'd been back in over 20 years, and so Kenya's changed so much. But it was wonderful to also see. First of all, this is how crazy Kenya is. So I went to a very prestigious private school, but it overlooked the slum, and so just the juxtaposition where you have these gated communities who are just sort of oblivious to the poverty around them, and for the first time when I went back, the school was like, we spent many years sort of keeping these walls up, and realized a lot of these walls aren't to keep people out, it's to keep people in. And they realized, let's break down these walls, let's actually be active in our community, let's go in and help people. And I was like, this is great. And that's so hopefully when German King does take off, the school's going to be involved in that as well. They're now starting to teach African history, which isn't something that happened before, and it's great to have a new generation that's going to start embracing their culture, their heritage, their language, and I'm super stoked to that's happening. But also, I think what's great is as we do that, as we go more into our community, we end up having just a great. It's just, once again, it was what I was saying before. It's just allowing us to take pride in who we are and understand that there's more that unites us than separates us, and we really are all one. And it takes a village, as we say in our culture. So, but does anyone have any questions so far? I'm having technical difficulties. So Stephanie, I might ask you to read out some of the questions that we have, because I can't really see them. But feel free. Okay. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask. And if you have any questions about editing, because Stephanie is here for another few minutes, you're going to have an Emmy-winning editor. So I'm going to actually answer that question. How many Emmys has Stephanie Filo won? Do you want to answer that question? Stephanie, how many Emmys have you won?
3.
3 Emmys! 3 Emmys. So if anyone guessed 3 Emmys, you were right. This was her 3rd Emmy. So Stephanie, can you tell us about each Emmy? And is one more special than the other? And where do you keep your Emmys?
I don't really know where to keep them. So if anyone has any ideas, please let me know.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
Well, no, it's very like we were talking about this like before we got on this live stream of like, it's hard. I think it's hard for both of us to like talk about like, oh yeah, like you said like, oh, creator and star, like it's weird to say that. Like it's weird to be like, oh yeah, here's these Emmys. Like I don't know where to put them. I don't know how to talk about them. And like someone was like, you should have them behind you on all Zoom calls.
Yeah.
I don't I don't know where they go. I know you asked like, is any of them more special than the other? I don't think so. Like they're all just really like, it's an honor to be recognized in this way. You know, I think the first one I won with our cousin Zinga Blake, and so that was just like such a special experience. This was at the height of COVID, so we were on the couch when this happened. It wasn't like it was in person at any sort of like event or function. It was just
Right.
like from home. But I feel like it was just like more exciting in that way because yeah, it's like we're all there with like exactly who we want to be there with. So it was just like
Yeah.
a really special experience. And last year we won for a Black Lady sketch show, which was exciting. And then this year we also won for a Black Lady sketch show. And last year was exciting because actually it's all been exciting because the first one, Zinga and I were the first Sierra Leonean women to win an Emmy. And then last year we were the first all women of color team to win an Emmy, and this year we were the first all Black team to win an Emmy. So it's been very just like it's a lot of pressure, but very, very just humbling and exciting.
You're making history, Stephanie, and it's funny because there's this years ago. You know that quote that came out of Sierra Leone is like "Nothing good will come alone." You know remember that whole thing, and you are just putting us on the map and making us all so proud. And once again, I'm so humbled and honored to be able to work with you, and that you said yes to coming on board to edit the German King series and make history together. So thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Are there any tips you will give to people who want to be editors?
I think it's just to practice edit. You know, I think there's a lot of like the idea of like, oh, I'm working on something and it's not very big, or like it's not something anyone's going to see, or it's just like a TikTok video, or it's, you know, if like it's just whatever. It's not, because I think you can take all of that stuff with you to every project that you do in the future as well. You know, everything I've ever worked on somehow is like part of my toolkit for the next thing and the next thing. You know, you just build on your skill set. So it's like the more you practice, the more you can kind of think on the fly, because it's also a lot of problem solving in our job and trying to like put puzzles together. So it's just extra ways to solve puzzles the more you practice. And then once that opportunity arrives and you've practiced and you're prepared, like, and those intersect, it's like the perfect mix.
Excellent. Thanks for that. One person asked, what are the most challenging scenes for you to edit? Yeah, I want to know the answer to
that. There's different types of challenging, I think. I think technically the most challenging to edit is comedy, because sometimes it's really hard to make a joke land, right? You need the exact right timing, the exact time, like reactions to things, the exact right music, right? Maybe the music cuts out and starts somewhere else. Maybe the music has like you might have like a horror sting in something that's not a horror moment. You know, it's like you have just so many different ways that you kind of have to figure out to make something funny. And it's all subjective as well. So it's kind of like, you know, somebody might find one thing funny and somebody else might not find the same thing funny. So I think that's maybe the most challenging technically. The most challenging emotionally for me are documentaries sometimes.
Sorry, we have a guest.
Yay. Aww.
Okay. Someone's trying to steal the spotlight from Stephanie. Yeah, go ahead.
So cute. Um,
Oh, I love you.
Sorry, I got excited by the dog. No, I was just gonna say the most challenging emotionally for me, I think, have been documentaries sometimes because you're looking at these, real people's stories, and a lot of times those are heavy. A lot of times documentaries might be like a more serious tone. You don't always get like a quirky Tiger King style. So it's a lot of times you might be looking at someone else's trauma or like darkest moments. So I think those are just challenging emotionally because they sit with you, and there's a lot of weight on trying to do the story justice and be like, I guess, just honor the person who's willing to share their story on screen like that.
There's another question. Stephanie, can you read that for me?
What process do you go through to edit a film? Oh, from start to finish? Usually for me, so if I know I'm starting a project, I get a little obsessive about it. So I'm like, okay, what genre is this, right? So I will look at anything that's maybe relevant from within that genre, or listen to scores maybe that are within the tone that I'm kind of thinking of, just to get in that headspace. Once things start getting filmed, you get dailies in. So that's like each day something's shot, you get the dailies the next day, and then you basically start watching all that raw footage. So you watch through all the hours that
Sorry.
I was like, whoa.
Yeah, I'm here. My dog sort of disrupted things. I'm back.
But so you'll watch through basically all the hours of footage that were shot. Sometimes I'll go through and pull like selects, so kind of like the moments that I think really stand out in the footage. So I'm like, I know I need to incorporate this somehow, and then I will assemble it. If it's like a scripted project, assemble it the way it's scripted, and then I'll start to kind of pepper in these moments that I'm like, I know that this was a good take, I know that this was a good reaction. If it's comedy, like I know this was a funny improv moment, let me see how I can like tie this all together. From that, you basically do that cut, you turn it in, right? You polish it as much as you can. You put music and sound. So that's also a big thing that I'm obsessive about. Sometimes music, especially in comedy, is its own character. So it's like you really have to kind of try to nail those moments and that kind of sound design to make that comedy work. But basically, once you've done like your first pass of something, that's called an editor's cut. You turn that in, and then you work with the director on their notes and just making it, in line with whatever they think it should also be. And that's called your director's cut. So once you do that, you turn it into producers or to a studio. In this case, it would be Angel Studios. And so the producers will look at it and give you notes and feedback, and you address all of those things. And once you've kind of addressed everything and everyone has no more notes, it's locked. So you would just say the cut is locked. And from there, that's when it gets passed to color correction, to the sound mix, and then to what airs or what streams. So it's a fun process. It's fun to kind of collaborate with people in that capacity.
Excellent. Someone else asked, what got you interested in editing?
So when I was younger, in like middle or high school, I watched the movie Seven, which I should not have probably been watching, because
how old were you? I still have nightmares. What's in the box?
As you know, it's not the most lighthearted thing, but the opening title sequence from that movie. I fell in love with the opening title sequence from that movie, and I was just like, it's interesting that they are telling a story without words. It's really just like images and music, but somehow you know like what the whole movie's about in that opening title sequence. And so I kind of just started playing around with like my home movie camera and like my VHS tapes, and like I'm like, oh, how do I, how do I do this? And I kind of just didn't realize that that was like a career path that I could take. I didn't know that it was editing that I was doing. It was just kind of playing around with stuff. And so when I came to LA and I knew I wanted to be involved in film and TV in some capacity, I was just kind of knocking on every door, and I got a job as an assistant editor on a project. And so in doing that job, I was like, wait, this is kind of like similar to what I did when I was younger. And it was something that I was like, I think I'm going to explore this. And I just kind of worked my way up from there.
Excellent. One more question. I can't read that. It's below my screen for some reason. Stephanie, can you read that?
It says, I think this is for you. It says, what is your current timeline for casting, filming, and production and release?
Well, that's a very, very good question. And well, so if and when we open up a crowdfunding round, we will production. And so we ideally as soon as possible, but that can only happen if you go to angel.com/GermanKing. So please go to angel.com/GermanKing and be sure to like, subscribe, share this link, tell your friends, tell everybody if you do want to see this series happen. And before we go, actually, I want to share some. So part of the reason why I went to Kenya was because I was location scouting and I got to see some incredible locations. And everybody, and I mean this, if you do one thing in your life, go to Kenya, go to Africa, because it will, for me, I remember just sitting under the stars and looking at the Milky Way. You can literally see the Milky Way and thinking, wow, there is a God. There is something that created me that makes me, that there's so much, it's special. It's a special once a lifetime experience. And my goodness, trust me, you're never going to regret it. But one of the things we're going to do for those of you who are supporting the German King, and I might be jumping the gun a little bit here, so forgive me, Angel Studios, but I'm going to say, if you support the German King, there might be a chance for you to have an all-expense-paid safari to come to Kenya and experience exactly what I experienced. So if you go on my Instagram at Adetokumboh, you get to see my journey and all the amazing things that I got to do, and it is surreal. But the trip was, and I've lived in Africa, and going back and really doing this incredible tour, the safari and the game drives, it was unlike anything I've ever experienced. And I remember I did, I've worked with a few people who've come to Africa and who've done things like this, and they're like, you must go to Africa, because that's when you'll believe in life, you believe in a God, you believe in something bigger than you, and whatever your belief is. And right, Stephanie? No, so yeah, it's it's unreal. So shout out to Visit Africa. Shout out to Visit Africa Limited, who's actually going to be responsible. There I am as a kid. That's my first movie that I did, The Great Elephant Escape. But do we have any shots from the tours that I did of some of the locations? Oh, that's the lion that made us trapped. That's that lion that was surrounding our vehicle. One of the several lions that was surrounding our vehicle. But yeah, we're going to have some amazing locations, and I cannot wait for you guys to see just the majesty and the splendor of Africa, as well as, the architecture. And this can only happen once again if you go to angel.com/GermanKing. So once again, thank you guys for joining us. Stephanie, thank you so much for being a part of our live stream. We really, really appreciate that. And I cannot wait to start working with you in a few months.
Likewise. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. All right, bye everybody. And once again, go to angel.com/GermanKing and let's make the show happen. All right, take care. And thank you to everyone who's also contributed. We really appreciate it.